I made a reply to this earlier, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I did want to leave a reply, so I'll try again. I mean, the first thing is that, I don't care if you want to converse with me, but you make this a subject by talking so generally. You know, you say, why do I have reason to talk like people like this? And then you act like it's everyone on YouTube that you're talking about, and that includes me. And you use examples that, obviously don't apply to me. I don't think you'd say they apply to me. Clearly, you don't want to base your decisions on just one person. You want to do it on patterns, but you don't speak in any moderate tones that some of the people out there might not have the reactions that bother you so much. And it's an important distinction because, you're worried about how people might perceive you if somebody is showing you as Hitler and saying you're an anti-Semite. But someone like me, and this is important, would never believe that. If I saw that depiction of you, I might not care, and maybe that there's culpability in that apathy. I might not care. But if I was gonna care and think that you either were or weren't an anti-Semite, and I wanted to find out. Let's say I'd seen a video and thought, well, you didn't look like an anti-Semite. That's strange. I want to know. Then I would go look at the videos where you're talking about this stuff, and I would use that to determine for myself if you were an anti-Semite. Okay, the cost to this accusation is that, yeah, I might investigate it specifically because it was accused, and that might be a waste of time. But basically, who are you worried about? The people that don't care enough to investigate for themselves but are going to believe it anyway. A lot of people take that shortcut. They they don't care enough to actually investigate, but they just can't give up the idea that maybe they know something, so they just take someone's word for it. Well, I don't do that, and most people that are good at dialogue don't necessarily do that, and are semi-intelligent don't do that in this kind of context. They let a person speak for themselves. They know that another person cannot speak for this other person. Furthermore, they ought to know that various personality types and interaction types and histories lead to standard accusations. A standard accusation of being a Nazi is a perfect example. It's possible for almost anyone to get accused of that, in particular. Now, you do bear some responsibility for the way people are reacting to you. The fact that you'll use what people consider abusive language, has an effect here. If it conveys, um, you know, it conveys that you can take what you can give, so you're going to attract more of that. And sometimes you have gone across the line. It's not purely stylistic. It bleeds it out into the real meat of the interaction. And for example, I think to be serious, and maybe other women, and I think you acknowledge this, at least in some cases, that you've used misogynistic terms, that you call a woman a bitch in your argument. It has implications wider than the scope of that one video. You bring in things you don't really need to bring into that. But to your credit, and again, here's where you talk about the bad people out there, and I'm thinking about my case, you know, I appreciate that you have stopped using that you've caught yourself. And you're not being sexist or favoring women. Still, like you say you would, you still call them assholes or fucktards or whatever. But you do that in a way that's less misogynistic in its pattern. It doesn't have to reinforce that per se. So that's good, and I appreciate that. And again, it seems like you feel unappreciated. You're saying people aren't worthy of taking, you know, clear arguments against you. And I'm doing that, and I'm going out of my way because in the course of this, of course, you have insulted me. We've gotten a little bit on each other's nerves in various ways. And so it takes some effort, on both of our parts to go ahead and overlook that and try to keep the dialogue in a particular constructive form, as constructive as possible. But you give me no credit, and people like me. I'm not the only one that thinks this way, and you give us no credit. And you don't make a distinction between people that are differing with you in a good way, that challenges your ideas, even if it just makes them stronger. Maybe it makes you get new ideas. And you don't make a distinction between that and people that are just hecklers. We've all become performers a little bit. I mean, I very much try to not to keep performance out of what I'm doing and just talk about my ideas and don't have a particular pretense other than that I have the right to an opinion and so forth. And that I'm not a performer. I'm not trying to get a bigger audience. I'm not trying to appeal to an audience. It's about my expression of my ideas, primarily, first and foremost. And there's nothing wrong with being a performer and wanting to use it for self-promotion for a talent you think that people can appreciate, where you're manipulating emotions, but only, honestly, because you're acting and you're trying to have something emotionally, um, impactful. So I try to keep a distinction there. But there's more people that watch than comment. There's more people that watch than make videos. So it is a performance from the point of view of people that are just watching, or watching more than they're taking part, even if they're taking part a little bit. So whether you want to or not, you have these conversations in public. There's an element of performance, and something that comes along with that is hecklers. And you have to deal with hecklers. You have to deal with them. You either have to, like some comedians, just engage with them. They use them for their comedy. They turn the tables. Sometimes it's more like, this is a ballet recital. The only way we can deal with the heckler, we can't have the ballerinas go out there and confront the heckler. We just have to take you out of the hall. YouTube gives you a wide span of tools to do one or the other of these things. I tend to engage or ignore the hecklers. The, some people just ban them because it's more like a fragile performance that can't be interrupted, and hopefully that's enough to deal with these problems. But you can't feel particularly beleaguered if it's just coming from the fact that, come on, from these people's points of view, you have thousands of people watching you, or hundreds or whatever, and they're just in the audience trying to keep things real, or whatever they think they're doing. Maybe they're just getting shits and giggles, whatever. They are heckling for all the reasons people heckle, and they see themselves in the David position and you in the Goliath position, and that generates a lot of what they do. The reason it's so extreme is they see that justified because they're the David to your big audience Goliath. So, and it's just an aspect of performing. From your perspective, hopefully you can keep it different. You can say, no, this is a dialogue. But in that case, you're going to have to ignore those people, or maybe block them if you must, and be realistic about it. You can't put my criticisms of you or your ideas in the same category as people that would assume you were anti-Semitic because they saw your face with a Hitler mustache but never saw any of your actual videos or your actual opinions. You can't lump us all together. Not fair. You can't be fair and lump us all together, and that's what you're doing. Um, so uh, that's my comment on that, and uh, I really don't know what else to say. So, okay.